From the looming threat of another public sector strike to the Premier's comments on unelected judges. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, former journalist and broadcast news educator Laura Knop and Don Hill, co-founder of the blog Beyond Polarity and a longtime broadcast journalist in Alberta. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the uncertain situation surrounding nearly 16,000 healthcare aides, licensed practical nurses, among others. They could serve strike notice as early as the start of next week if a new deal cannot be reached. We heard from new president of the AUPE, Sandra Azikar, off the top this evening on expectations heading into additional bargaining dates scheduled for this weekend. Laura, surprised to see that this is coming down to the wire, that the members of another public sector union could be hitting picket lines in roughly a week's time.
I'm not the least surprised. It seems like they talk about a tipping point, and it seems that at the moment we are at that tipping point. I mean, when the Ford government went ahead and ordered teachers back to work, there was immediately a general strike. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened just yet. But the fact of the matter is people are really, really angry, and they don't feel like this government is truly listening to them, with the notwithstanding clause and so on. I am not the least bit surprised. It seems like 12% is the government's line in the sand. That's a lot less than AUP is looking for. And crossing my fingers, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a walkout next week.
Don, the Health Sciences Association back into bargaining as of today, I understand through the end of the week, though it too is threatening to hold a strike vote if its leaders feel AHS and the government are not taking negotiations seriously. What is to be made of the position the Smith government now finds itself in?
Well, you're not going to like what I have to say, but we heard it just a few moments ago from the new leader of the AUPE, and that we can't take 20th century ideas into the 21st century. So let me just do a few bits of numbers here. We've had in-migration in Canada to Alberta that's right through the roof. And on top of that, we've had immigration landing here in Alberta. How do we know this? Well, in Calgary, for instance, the most recent number of kids requiring English as a second language was 40,000 plus kids came into the system just last year and the year before that. So what the unions are negotiating, I'm not quite sure. What version of Alberta are we talking about? So I'm not going to discredit or credit the Smith government, but I can say there's a huge communication problem going on here. And we really actually don't know what we're talking about. Everybody wants more money. Well, yeah, we get that part. But how much is too much and what's not enough in a changing Alberta where we're not even sure what all the numbers are at this moment?
Laura, this is a constituency week for MLAs, but the fall sitting is set to resume next week. How do you see the government weighing the prospect of further back-to-work legislation if it is that the AUPE serves strike notice on Monday?
I think once you've done it, you have opened Pandora's box. And, they could have gone back to binding arbitration with the teachers. They still could do it with AUP. They still could do it with HSAA. But they did it. They ordered them back to work. They used the notwithstanding clause, despite everybody, or not everybody, but a number of people being quite horrified by that. You've opened the door. Now that the door is open, I can see them walking right through it again and again.
Don, Laura mentioned a little bit earlier about how this might land with Albertans. So further fodder for those driving recall petition efforts if things go sour next week?
Well, I just want to refer to what I was saying just a few moments ago and also echoing what Laura just said here. And that is the following. What version of Alberta are we talking about? Let's go back to Premier Peter Lougheed. I will tiny a little bit about this because at the beyondpolarity.blog, you can hear what Donna Kennedy-Glantz and I did in a conversation I had with Premier Lougheed, one of the last ones before he passed away. Some time ago, that's true. Now, one of the things that Peter Lougheed brought up about not just the notwithstanding clause was that you had to be like Zen. You had to be aware of the moment that you're in. I know it sounds kind of obtuse and weird and very dawn, but I'm actually being very serious about this. You can talk about the way we were, and you might talk about the way it could be or should be, but you have to deal with the way it is now. And the way it was back then was there was an issue about who owned the rights to resources in provinces right across the country. So what Premier Lougheed did at the time, and I'm making this, the details are a bit amplified here at this point. They drilled a gas well, which wasn't worth anything, down in the Pincher Creek territory area, knowing full well that the federal government of Canada was going to intervene. Was he breaking the law? Was he doing this or that? No, they were responding to a moment in time that they had to get some clarity about who owned what or where. So, having said all of that, if the AUPE and other member organizations want to stand off with who actually is in control of people who work for them, then so be it. We're going to find out in a Zen moment. It won't be pretty, but it's bound to happen sooner than later.
All right, for us, it's time to take a little bit of a break. But when we come back, the Premier's comments on democracy and the courts. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. The Premier is defending use of the notwithstanding clause to end the strike by teachers, saying it was invoked for the sake of Alberta kids and for democracy.
Democracy is when the elected officials make decisions. Democracy is not when unelected judges unilaterally make decisions. So let's be clear about what democracy is.
The comments came in the wake of the Alberta Teachers Association announcing a court challenge, the ATA looking for a judge to pause the Back to School Act and determine if it violates protected rights under the Charter. Don, what kind of window is the Premier opening when she calls on the courts to refrain from interfering with the decisions of elected officials?
Well, just before the break, I kind of alluded to a kind of a Zen thing. Sorry if it's getting a little too obtuse. I think I agree with Laura. This is going to be really weird over the next couple of months as there's a showdown. The vision, the images, if we could use a Buddhist image, one buffalo or bison, depending on, crashing into another bison, which is crashing into a car, which is crashing. It's just going to be, and out of that, like at CERN in Switzerland, we're examining the particles, and we'll see if there's some kind of sense making out of all this. But just to be very, very sincere about this is a moment in labor history which will be watched very, very carefully right across the country. And I suggest that a lot of other people are going to be coming in on this, not just judges, but people from across the country, to see how this is all going to unfold over the next short while.
Laura, surprised to hear the Premier make specific reference to unelected judges. What's your read on potential messaging in that regard?
Well, you know, our system is quite different. A lot of us are used to seeing like the American system where judges are elected. There's pros and cons to both. The thing that really bothers me about this, though, is that it's preemptive. That bill, that back to work order, did not go to the court. Had it gone to the court and the court overruled that order, and then she said, okay, we're going to use the notwithstanding clause, that seems to me to be due process. But to just preemptively say, we know how the judges are going to rule, and so we are not going to go along with it, it seems like there is a really, really important piece missing. And for her talk about democracy, democracy is also upheld by the rule of the law. And if it's not, we don't have true democracy. And that disturbs me.
Don, in the last block, you brought up the name of a certain former Alberta Premier. Now, in the same news conference where the Premier made her comments that we heard a moment ago, she also said Peter Lougheed would have done the same in using the notwithstanding clause to end the teacher strike. How do you weigh that assertion?
Well, again, I spoke with Premier Lougheed shortly before he died, and we did a piece on actually the decisions that they made. I said, you know, the situations are different, Premier Lougheed, but how did you guys go about this with your cabinet to make this kind of decision? At the time, I was also working at the Banff Centre in the leadership development, so I was very curious about how they arrived at this decision. And I'm just going to echo ad nauseum, I'm sorry, that they were very much involved in the moment. And also, they were thinking about the future. Now, I'm going to go sideways for just a second here, okay? Quebec gets to do this all the time, and nobody squawks. So why all this beating up on Danielle Smith? The rule of law is there. It's called notwithstanding. It's a tool. She used it, and it will be used as it is used across the country. Why are we not surprised by this? Does this not invite the parties at the table with an employer, meaning the public sector unions, to reconsider what they're doing in these absolutely chaotic times where you have somebody in the United States saying this could be the 51st state, et cetera, et cetera. Can we just wake up and look around and see what's happening and then have a discussion? Now, I agree with Laura. If you don't follow the law, you no longer have a democracy. I get that part. But at the same time, let's have some wiggle room here and there, okay?
Okay, I think we have enough time to squeeze in one more topic. That is the Smith government seeking the opinion of Albertans on raising the speed limit to 120 kilometers an hour on divided highways. Transportation Minister Devin Dreeshen says he wants Albertans to be able to drive the speed that highways were designed for. He says modern vehicles combined with public awareness means the government can explore higher speed limits. The online survey, which is now underway, asks which highways should be prioritized. Laura, how do you see this move fitting into the political dialogue of the day? Is this one of those issues riding high on the radar of Albertans?
I haven't heard a whole lot about it. It's kind of a libertarian viewpoint that, the government's going to step back. BC did give it a shot and had a lot of crashes and backed off on it. I've driven the number 2 highways more times than I care to think about, and it's 110. I go 120 and I have people riding up behind me. If it's 120, then those same people are probably going to do 130 or 140 because we always have the people that want to just push it. So there are stretches. I was in the north this summer. There are stretches where absolutely it would be appropriate. There's others that you've really got to think about this idea.
Don, let me ask you this. What do you see happening if it is that Albertans respond to the online survey with a big no? What kind of position would that leave the Smith government in?
Well, I think as Laura was saying just a few moments ago, it tends to be no longer a United Conservative Party, but more libertarian. And there will be some blowback from certain parts of the province, no doubt. I'm also have to. You made me laugh when you said, what's on Albertans' radar? Well, obviously, this is a distraction.
You caught the pun there, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I got that one real fast. So my point is, how do I put this? We've been in the communications business for a long, long time. We know how this stuff is made. If you want to distract somebody from something, you say, go over here and look at this. So about speed limits, huh? Like, why are we talking about these things right now when we should be talking about let's get the kids back in school and up to speed, that's my pun, and not go through the motions again of maybe we're all going to walk out with a general strike, and that's on the radar as well. And maybe that's time for another discussion, but not today.
Okay, last 30 seconds to you, Laura. If it is the other way around, that Albertans say yes to this, where does that leave the discussion?
Well, I think they will just rush into it. It was absolutely their idea. And I agree with Dawn, the best way to distract the public is say, look at the shiny thing over there. And so then we can go into a whole other discussion that has nothing to do with essential services, kids, healthcare, whatever. It's a good communications tactic.
Okay, all right. We're out of time. Have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you.
Good to see you, Michael. Bye-bye. See you, Laura. Bye-bye.
See you.